They thought I was too blind to notice. But when I found my own signature on papers I never signed, I realized my children and grandchildren were all in on the same scheme, to erase me from my own life. What they didn't expect was that I'd fight back, using the very documents they forged to destroy them. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. After Evelyn died, I lived quietly, though quiet can mean two very different things. To strangers, it looked like peace: coffee at 7 sharp, pruning the roses by 9, reading the newspaper cover to cover before lunch. To me, it felt more like survival. The structure was a lifeline, a way to keep my mind from drifting into the hollow space she left behind. For 40 years, Evelyn filled this house with her rhythm. The sound of her slippers sliding across the kitchen tile. Her laugh carrying from the garden when she spoke to the flowers as though they were children. The aroma of cinnamon rolls cooling on Sunday mornings when she insisted, "The grandchildren won't eat them, but you will." Now the slippers were silent, the garden was only mine to tend, and the cinnamon rolls came frozen in a box from the store. My children visited less than they used to, though I tried not to complain. They had their own lives, so they said. My daughter, Anna, worked long hours as an insurance adjuster. She'd call once a week, voice clipped, always rushing to another meeting. My son, Daniel, lived only 40 minutes away but claimed traffic made it difficult. He'd stop by every few months with his wife, bearing store-bought pies as if they were peace offerings. The house itself was my sanctuary, though at times it felt like a mausoleum. Every room held Evelyn's fingerprints. Her embroidered curtains still framed the windows. Her handwriting remained on recipe cards tucked in the kitchen drawer. Even the faint dent on the hallway wall, where she once dropped a picture frame in a hurry, was a reminder of her presence. I kept it all as it was, because changing anything felt like erasing her. Financially, I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. My pension from 35 years in civil engineering provided steady support. Between that and the savings Evelyn and I had built together, careful deposits from every paycheck, every bonus, every tax refund, we managed a tidy nest egg. Nothing extravagant, but enough to carry me through my old age without burdening anyone. That had always been our goal: independence. To never lean on our children. To leave them something when our time came. It was a plan Evelyn and I had whispered about on late nights after the bills were paid and the house was finally quiet. "We'll take care of them even when we're gone," she'd say, her hand resting on mine. And I'd nod, because I believed it. Because I believed in her. But as I would learn, the children we raised with care and sacrifice had very different ideas. Anna, my eldest, had always been the responsible one, or at least she wore responsibility like a uniform. When her mother was sick, she was the one who managed the medication schedules, called the doctors, and handled the insurance forms. But she also had a sharpness to her, a way of speaking that could make even kindness sound like a transaction. Her husband, Martin, was quieter, the kind of man who spoke little but always seemed to be calculating something behind his eyes. Together they had Evan, my grandson, who was bright enough to know how to charm teachers and elders alike. At 17, he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone convinced the world owed him a head start. Daniel, my younger child, was different. He'd inherited his mother's warmth, but not her discipline. A man of big dreams and little follow-through. Always chasing an opportunity, a restaurant investment, a handyman service, a can't-miss real estate flip. His wife, Carla, tolerated it with tight smiles, though I often wondered if she counted the hours until his next scheme collapsed. Their 2 daughters, Sophie and Lily, were sweet girls, though I could already see Sophie, the elder, adopting her mother's wary distance, while Lily still ran to me with drawings and stories about her school days. I tried to be fair with all of them, giving birthday gifts, writing checks when tuition bills came, showing up at games and recitals. I thought I was doing what Evelyn would have wanted, being present, steady, generous. But underneath, I sensed a shift. Conversations grew shorter, visits less frequent, gratitude thinner. It was as if, somewhere along the line, I had transformed from father and grandfather into something else entirely, an account, a signature, a vault waiting to be opened. And then came the letter. It was a Tuesday morning when it arrived, tucked innocently among the utility bills and junk mail. I nearly tossed it aside, but the bank's letterhead caught my eye. Inside was a congratulatory notice: my refinancing had gone through successfully, and the new payment schedule was enclosed. Refinancing? I sat at the kitchen table, the paper trembling between my fingers. I hadn't refinanced anything. Not once in all my years had I taken a loan against this house. Evelyn and I had worked too hard to pay it off in full, to keep it safe. Yet here it was in black and white, an agreement with my name, my social security number, even my signature scrawled at the bottom. Only it wasn't mine. The loops in the H were too high. The flourish on the S didn't belong to me. To anyone else, it would have looked authentic. To me, it was like staring at a stranger wearing my face. That was the moment I realized something was terribly, deliberately wrong. For a long minute I just sat there, staring at the letter as though squinting at it might make the words rearrange themselves into sense. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe the bank had mixed up accounts. Or maybe, my hands trembled at the thought, maybe I had forgotten something. At 75, people expect you to forget. My daughter's tone on the phone when she reminded me of appointments carried that subtle warning, as though she were measuring my decline. What if they were right? What if I had signed something and misplaced the memory? The doubt gnawed at me. I pushed back from the kitchen table and went to the old walnut cabinet in the study, the one Evelyn used to call our vault. Every important paper we ever touched lived in there: tax returns, deeds, insurance policies, even yellowed receipts from when we first bought this house. I pulled out folders one by one, spreading them across the desk like cards in a losing hand. The original deed, intact. Paid in full notice on the mortgage, filed and dated. Our wills, drafted 20 years ago, both copies signed neatly in blue ink. Everything in its place, every signature mine. So why did this new one feel so wrong? I opened the bank statements, flipping month to month, searching for withdrawals or deposits that didn't belong. My pension still came in steady. Utilities still went out on time. But buried between pages, I noticed something odd: a $60 fee marked "Notary Services" from 3 weeks ago. I hadn't notarized anything since Evelyn passed. My chest tightened. The rational part of me whispered, maybe you just forgot. But the part of me forged from decades of engineering work, the part that lived in blueprints and numbers, knew better. The lines of that signature in the letter weren't mine. And if they weren't mine, someone had gone to great lengths to make it look like they were. I sat back, Evelyn's old reading glasses lying on the desk beside me, and for the first time in years I felt something colder than grief crawl up my spine. There was only one way to be certain. I gathered the letter, my files, and the neatly folded deed into my briefcase. My hand shook as I buttoned my coat. By the time I backed the car out of the driveway, I was pressing harder on the accelerator than I meant to, the old engine whining as if it understood my urgency. I was going to the bank. And one way or another, I was going to find out who was trying to steal my life on paper. The glass doors hissed open, and the cold air of the lobby rushed over me. I didn't bother with the polite nod I usually gave the receptionist. My briefcase was clutched tight in one hand, the letter folded like a weapon in the other. "Where's the branch manager?" My voice carried sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. Heads turned from the line of customers. The young teller blinked, startled, before stammering, Mr. Cole's in his office, sir. But if you'd like to sit." "I'm not sitting," I snapped, already moving past her. "I'm here about a fraud, and I'll speak to him now." The manager's office door was half open. I didn't knock. I pushed it wider and laid the letter down on his desk so hard the paper nearly tore. "Explain this," I said. Mr. Cole was a man I'd known for years. He'd shaken my hand when Evelyn and I paid off our mortgage, had smiled for the photo they used in the bank's newsletter, local couple debt-free after 30 years. But today, his smile faltered. He adjusted his glasses, glanced at the paper, and gave me a rehearsed little nod. "Yes, Mr. Matthews. This is your refinance agreement. Everything went through smoothly. Congratulations, you." "Stop." My palm slammed the desk. "I never refinanced. I never signed this. That is not my signature." His eyes flickered, betraying something, hesitation, discomfort, or perhaps knowledge. Slowly, he pulled a thick manila folder from his drawer, setting it on the desk. He opened it, turned it toward me. Inside was the full file. My name. My social security number. Photocopies of my driver's license. And page after page, each one with a scrawled version of my signature. I stared at them, bile rising in my throat. "These are forgeries," I said, voice low but hard. "Every last one of them. Whoever did this had access to my documents." Mr. Cole cleared his throat. "Mr. Matthews, I assure you, we verified the paperwork. The notary's stamp is valid, and the witnesses signed. If you're suggesting fraud." "I'm not suggesting," I cut him off, leaning forward until my shadow fell across his desk. "I'm telling you. Someone forged these. Someone close enough to me to get my information. Now I want every detail, dates, names, who presented this paperwork, what notary signed it. And I want it now." The manager hesitated again, then reached for the file. My hand shot out faster than his age would have suggested possible. I pressed my palm down, keeping it in place. "You try to hide anything from me, and I'll have the police down here before you finish your coffee." The room went very quiet. Finally, he exhaled and pulled a printout from the file. "It was processed 3 weeks ago," he said slowly. "Submitted in person. Witnesses: Anna Matthews and Evan Matthews." The names hit me like a blow. My daughter. My grandson. The floor seemed to tilt under me. My own blood had signed me away. "Read the rest," I said, my voice low and steady, though I could feel the pulse hammering in my temples. Line by line. Mr. Cole hesitated, then slid the page closer to me, his finger tracing the typed entries. "Notarized by," he squinted at the stamp, "Rebecca Vaughn. Registered in this county. Witness signatures, Anna Matthews, Evan Matthews." Anna. My daughter. The child I'd carried on my shoulders at the zoo, who used to clutch my sleeve so tightly during thunderstorms. Evan. My grandson. The boy who once built Lego castles in my living room, his laughter bouncing off the walls Evelyn had painted with such care. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd sat in a room and watched my name be stolen. And they'd smiled while doing it. I forced my eyes back to the paper, though my hands trembled so badly I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep steady. "And the notary?" I asked. "Rebecca Vaughn," Cole repeated. "Independent. She's been contracted with us before. Verified her license last month. Independent. Contracted." The words rang hollow. I imagined Anna, ever efficient, rehearsing her smile for the notary, explaining how Dad just couldn't make it today, but here's the paperwork. Evan, probably smirking, watching how easily the world could be bent when your last name opened doors. "Dates," I demanded. "What day, what time?" Cole flipped another page. Submission date was May 14th, signed here in the branch office. May 14th. I pictured it with sudden clarity. That was the day Anna had called me, asking if I needed groceries. She'd dropped by with 2 paper bags and a box of tea, Evelyn's favorite blend. She'd hugged me at the door. Asked about my roses. She'd looked me in the eye while the ink was drying on a crime against me. The bile climbed higher in my throat. I leaned closer, my shadow swallowing the neat order of his desk. "Listen to me carefully, Cole. I've been a customer here for 40 years. You've seen me, face to face, more times than you've seen your own board of directors. Do you believe for 1 second that this signature belongs to me?" His gaze flicked down, then back up. He swallowed. It is convincing. But no. It doesn't look like yours." I straightened, gripping the briefcase until the leather creaked. My mind was a storm, memories of bedtime stories, family dinners, Evelyn's dying wish to take care of them. I had taken care of them. Too well. So well they thought I was no longer a man but an obstacle. "Make me a full copy of this file," I ordered. "Every page, every attachment. And you will give me the notary's full contact information. Right now." Cole hesitated again, eyes darting toward the door like he was searching for an escape. "You don't understand, Mr. Matthews, there are procedures." I slammed my hand down on the folder. "I understand perfectly. Either you hand me the file, or I walk out of here and straight into the police station with this letter and your name on it." The silence stretched, taut as wire. Finally, Cole exhaled, shoulders sagging. "Give me 10 minutes, he said quietly. As he left to make the copies, I stared at the signatures again. My daughters. My grandsons. Together, in ink, against me. And in that moment, grief turned into something colder, sharper. They thought they'd buried me in paper. But I was still alive. 10 minutes later, Cole returned with a stack of photocopies clipped neatly, the notary's name and license number scrawled on a sticky note. He slid it across the desk with the unease of a man who knew he was handing over dynamite. I tucked it all into my briefcase without a word. My mind was already elsewhere, cataloging possibilities, running through the steps like I used to in the field, when one faulty calculation could bring down an entire structure. Outside, the summer sun felt cruelly bright. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the notary's name. Rebecca Vaughn. A stranger. Or perhaps not. Back home, I spread the copies across the dining room table, just like blueprints. Each page was another nail in the coffin my children thought they were building for me. The signatures mocked me, the false witnesses a betrayal etched in ink. But it was the notary's stamp that caught my attention. A circle, crisp at first glance, but too perfect. I leaned closer, pulled a magnifying glass from Evelyn's sewing box. The numbers in the county code were slightly off-center, the ink heavier on one side. Sloppy. Almost as if someone had scanned it, then printed it. My heart kicked against my ribs. If the stamp was fake, then Rebecca Vaughn might not exist at all, or she existed only on paper, conjured by whoever was helping Anna and Evan. I picked up the phone and dialed the county clerk's office. My voice was calm, polite, the way it always had been when speaking to officials. Yes, I'd like to verify a notary's license. Rebecca Vaughn, license number, I read it off. There was typing on the other end. A pause. Then the clerk's voice, "I'm sorry, sir, but that license expired 2 years ago." Expired. My grip on the receiver tightened until the plastic creaked. "Could you tell me," I asked evenly, "if this notary has been active in any filings recently?" "No, sir. Nothing since 2021. If she notarized something for you, it's not valid." I thanked her and hung up, though my pulse was anything but calm. There it was. Proof. Not just suspicion, not just doubt. Proof that my daughter and grandson hadn't stumbled into a mistake, they'd orchestrated it. They'd hunted for a weak link, found an expired notary, and used her name like a crowbar to pry me out of my own life. I sank into Evelyn's chair at the head of the table. Her ghost seemed to sit across from me, quiet, watchful. I could almost hear her voice, "Take care of them." I had. More than they ever knew. But taking care of them now meant something different. It meant preparing for war. I pulled a yellow legal pad toward me and began writing, old engineer's handwriting still sharp and precise. Track down Rebecca Vaughn. Alive? Complicit? Or stolen identity? Secure all property deeds from the county office. Verify chain of ownership. Quietly contact my lawyer, no word to Anna or Evan. Protect accounts. Move funds if necessary. Each number steadied me. Each plan was a weapon laid on the table. They thought I was too old, too slow, too trusting to catch them. They forgot who raised them. By the next morning, I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who understood the law better than any banker or clerk. Someone I could trust not to run to Anna or Evan with whispers. There was only one name that came to mind, Thomas Grayson. Tom and I had met in university. He studied law while I slogged through engineering. We'd shared cheap beer, late-night debates about politics, and more than a few bad decisions that, thankfully, never made it into our permanent records. After graduation, he'd gone on to build a respectable career as an estate lawyer, while I built bridges and roads. Life had pulled us apart, but every Christmas card from him reminded me he was still out there, still sharp. When I called his office, I half expected a secretary to tell me he was retired. Instead, his own voice answered, gruff but warm. "Harold. I'll be damned. What's been it, 40 years? "Closer to 50, I said. "Listen, Tom. I need help. And I can't trust my own blood." That silenced him. Lawyers hear strange things all the time, but betrayal by your children still has a weight to it. He told me to come in right away. By noon I was sitting across from him in his book-lined office, the smell of old paper and coffee filling the air. His hair was white now, but his eyes were the same, sharp, probing, unwilling to accept anything less than the truth. I spread the documents across his desk. He didn't interrupt, didn't laugh off my suspicions. He read every page, his brow furrowing deeper with each forged signature. Finally, He leaned back and tapped the notary stamp with his pen. "You're right. This is garbage. Expired license, no recorded filings. Whoever did this is either sloppy or arrogant, or both." "My daughter and grandson," I said quietly. "They're listed as witnesses." Tom let out a long breath through his nose. "That's not just sloppy. That's dangerous. If they filed this in court, it's perjury. And if money changed hands, it's fraud. Serious fraud." He leaned forward. "We need to find this Rebecca Vaughn. If she's real, she may have answers. If she's not, well, then you've got an even stronger case." Something in me steadied at his words. I wasn't alone anymore. "Then let's find her," I said. A slow smile spread across his face, the same one he used to wear when he knew he had the winning hand at poker. "I'll drive." We started with the basics. Tom called in a favor at the clerk's office and got the last known address on file for Rebecca Vaughn. A small house on the south side of town, listed under her name until a year ago, when it had been sold. That led us to a duplex, then to a P.O. box. Each breadcrumb felt more like a dead end than a trail. Still, Tom was relentless, scribbling notes, cross-referencing old directories with the precision of a man who had spent decades navigating legal mazes. I followed him step for step, the way I once followed Evelyn through garden shops, trusting her sense of what would bloom where. By the third day, we found ourselves on a quiet street lined with modest ranch houses, paint peeling from porches, yards kept more by habit than pride. 2410, Maple Drive. The latest address tied to Vaughn's name. The house looked tired but lived in. A wind chime clinked lazily on the porch. I glanced at Tom, who gave a small nod, then rapped firmly on the door. A moment later, it creaked open. A woman in her late 50s stood there, apron dusted with flour, eyes wary but not unfriendly. "Rebecca Vaughn?" Tom asked, flashing the kind of professional smile that still carried weight. She blinked. "Yes. Can I help you?" Tom held out the photocopy of the notarized refinance. "Did you sign and stamp this?" The change in her face was immediate. Color drained from her cheeks, and her hand trembled as she pushed the paper back toward him like it was poison. "Absolutely not," she said, voice tight. "That's my stamp, but I didn't sign this. My license expired 2 years ago." "Someone must have." She stopped, her eyes darting nervously toward me. I stepped forward. "Ma'am, my name is Harold Matthews. This document says I signed away my house." "I didn't. My daughter and grandson claim you notarized it." Her lips parted, then pressed shut again. She gripped the edge of the doorframe as though steadying herself. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to leave," she said quickly. "Please. They'll know you came here. They'll come after me if I talk." The words hit me harder than the forged papers ever had. Not just fraud, fear. I caught her gaze. "Who?" I asked. Her eyes flickered with something like pity, then fear again. "Your family. They're not working alone." The door slammed shut, the lock clicking into place. Tom and I stood there on the porch, the wind chime rattling overhead. For a moment, the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves on the pavement. Not working alone. The betrayal was deeper than I'd imagined. And if Rebecca Vaughn was afraid to even speak their names, then my daughter and grandson weren't just greedy. They were dangerous. Tom and I sat in his car for a long time after Rebecca slammed the door, the echo of her words clinging to the silence like smoke. "Not working alone," Tom repeated, his voice low. "That means someone with reach. Someone who knows the paperwork inside and out. This isn't just amateur forgery." I stared out the window at the house, at the faded curtains drawn tight. I thought of Anna's husband, Martin, always quiet at family dinners, eyes sharp but lips sealed. A man who never spoke unless it was to cut someone down with a fact they hadn't considered. Insurance adjuster, just like Anna. He made a career out of bending numbers until the truth snapped in half. "Martin," I muttered. Tom's brow lifted. "Her husband?" I nodded slowly. He always knew more about my accounts than he should have. Used to ask casual questions at barbecues, "What's your pension like, Harold? Still keeping all those old files in the study?" I thought it was idle chatter. Evelyn said I was being paranoid. Tom grimaced. "In my experience, paranoia is just foresight no one wants to hear." He flipped through the folder again, tapping a finger against the notary page. The license number was real, just expired. "That takes inside knowledge. Either Martin has a connection in county records, or he's paying someone who does." The thought churned my stomach. This wasn't just Anna and Evan playing with matches. This was an orchestrated fire, planned with precision. We spent the next day tracing every thread we could. Tom called a contact at the title office, off the record. Within hours, we learned there had been 3 separate attempts to file documents involving my property in the past 6 months. 2 had been rejected for minor errors. The third, the forged refinance, had slipped through. 3 attempts. A pattern. Persistence. They were practicing, I said, staring at the clerk's notes Tom had jotted down. Testing the system until they got it right. Tom leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "This is bigger than your family, Harold. Someone coached them. Someone supplied those templates. My guess? A dirty paralegal or junior lawyer willing to sell their stamp for a price." I felt the air thicken in my chest. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was betrayal backed by professionals. Tom picked up his phone again. "I know a retired investigator, used to work fraud for the state. If anyone can trace where these papers came from, it's him. We'll need to pay him quietly, keep this off the books." I looked at the table covered in copies of forged signatures and stolen authority, each page a knife in my back. "Do it," I said. My voice surprised me, flat, hard, like steel hammered in fire. Because if my own family wanted war, then I would fight it with allies they never imagined I still had. The knock came just after dusk, sharp and unexpected. I wasn't expecting anyone. My dinner plate was still warm on the table when I opened the door and found Anna standing there, smiling too brightly, a bottle of wine in her hand. "Dad," she said, voice sweet as honey. "Thought I'd stop by and check on you. Brought your favorite." She never brought wine. Not once since Evelyn passed. My chest tightened, but I stepped aside, masking the suspicion with a practiced smile. "Well, that's a surprise," I said lightly. Come in, come in." She moved through the house like it was already hers, coat hung neatly, shoes slipped off, bottle set on the counter. Her eyes flicked over the dining table where I had Evelyn's reading glasses, my notepad, and a small pile of bank statements spread out. Too quickly, I slid a newspaper over the papers, pretending it was nothing. "You've been busy," she said, narrowing her eyes. "Sorting old mail," I replied. Never ends, does it? She laughed softly, too rehearsed. Then, without asking, she poured 2 glasses of wine. Evan was asking about you, she said, handing me one. Said we don't spend enough time together. We should fix that. I took the glass, but didn't drink. My mind flashed back to his name scrawled on the forged documents, his witness signature sitting beside hers. My grandson, smiling as he learned how to ride his first bike. That same hand signing away my life. What's been keeping you so busy, Anna? I asked, casual as a fisherman casting a line. She smiled, sipped her wine. Work's insane, but you know me. Always juggling. Honestly, I think you'd be happier if you let me handle some of your paperwork. It must be exhausting, keeping track of everything alone. There it was. The hook. She tilted her head, watching me closely, waiting for weakness. I chuckled, masking the bile rising in my throat. Maybe one day. But for now, I like keeping my mind sharp. Keeps me from turning into an old fool. Her smile twitched, just for a second. Then she leaned back in her chair. You're not old, Dad. Just, you know. Sometimes forgetful. The word forgetful sliced deeper than she realized. I raised my glass, pretending to toast. Not as forgetful as you think. For the next half hour, we spoke about nothing, her job, Evan's college applications, traffic on the highway. I nodded in all the right places, laughed when I should. But beneath the mask, I was memorizing her every glance, every slip in tone. Finally, she rose, kissed my cheek, and said, "We'll talk more soon. Maybe this weekend." I smiled, walked her to the door, waved as she drove away. Only when her taillights disappeared did I return to the table, pull the newspaper aside, and stare down at my notes again. Tomorrow, Tom and I would meet the investigator. And Anna had no idea her performance tonight had only confirmed what I already knew. They thought I was blind. But I was watching everything. The next afternoon, Tom picked me up in his Buick, and we drove across town to a dingy office above a pawn shop. The blinds were half drawn, the air smelled faintly of stale coffee, and the man inside barely looked up from his files when we entered. "Everything's there," he muttered, sliding a thin folder across the desk. His voice was gravel, no pleasantries. Just business. I opened it. Inside were printouts, property filings, email records, even a partial bank transfer slip. "Your daughter didn't draft these herself," the man said. "She doesn't have the access. But someone fed her the templates. A paralegal from a downtown law firm. Been caught cutting corners before. Your son-in-law paid him under the table. Martin." I felt my jaw tighten. I could almost see him at the grill last summer, flipping burgers, making small talk, all while planning to carve me out of my own life. "And the notary?" Tom asked. The man shrugged. Her identity was stolen. Stamp copied and printed. Your family didn't do the forgery themselves, they had help. Organized help. Scene 2 came later that evening, when Tom and I sat in my dining room, the evidence spread across the table just as I'd done with my bank papers. "Here," Tom said, tapping a highlighted line. "Transfer to an escrow account in your grandson's name. Small, only 10,000, but enough to prove he was in on it. That ties Evan directly to the fraud." My stomach clenched. Evan, the boy Evelyn once cradled in her arms, swearing he was the future of the family. now reduced to a line on a fraudulent ledger. I leaned back, pressing my hands together to stop the tremor. So it's all of them. Anna, Evan, Martin. Working together. Tom nodded grimly. And with this paper trail, you can bury them in court. But Harold, this isn't just about suing. This is about exposing them. Once you confront them, there's no going back. I stared at the signatures, at the stolen notary stamp, at the transfer slip with my grandson's name. My heart felt heavy, but my mind was clear. They wanted everything, I said softly. But I'll make sure what they end up with is nothing. Tom made the calls. Quietly, carefully. His contacts at the fraud division were skeptical at first. Family disputes often smelled more of bitterness than crime, but when they saw the documents, the stolen notary license, and the bank transfers, their tone changed. This isn't sloppy inheritance squabbling, one detective muttered, flipping through the evidence. This is conspiracy, forgery, and fraud. And they left fingerprints all over it. The plan was simple. Let Anna and Martin come to me, thinking they were tightening their grip. I'd invite them for dinner, mention I'd been sorting through old files, and act as though I was ready to sign over more responsibility. The police would be waiting in unmarked cars down the street. That Friday evening, the doorbell rang. Anna, Martin, and Evan all stepped inside together. Smiling. Comfortable. Certain of victory. We ate roast chicken and potatoes in the same dining room where Evelyn used to host Christmas dinners. I played my part well, laughing at Martin's dull jokes, asking Evan about school, nodding along when Anna offered to streamline my finances. Then, after dessert, I stood, retrieved a folder from the sideboard, and placed it on the table. I've been thinking, I said, feigning hesitation. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time I let you take care of things. Why don't you look these over? Their eyes lit up. Martin reached first, sliding the folder toward himself. The moment he cracked it open, the front door burst wide. Detectives strode in, badges raised. Anna Matthews. Evan Matthews. Martin Greer. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The color drained from Anna's face. Evan stammered, "What, this isn't," but the handcuffs snapped shut before he could finish. Martin's jaw tightened, but his eyes darted toward me, rage, disbelief, fear all colliding. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there as the family I had raised, fed, and trusted were led out of my house in silence. The court proceedings came swiftly. Fraud cases with evidence this clean rarely drag on. I sat in the front row with Tom beside me as the prosecutor laid it out: forged signatures, expired notary license, financial transfers, witness collusion. Every shred of deceit exposed under the harsh light of law. Anna wept at the defense table, her mascara smudging, but I felt no pity. Evan sat stiff, jaw clenched in anger, while Martin remained stone-faced, as though pretending dignity could save him. When the judge finally declared the will invalid, the deed restored, and the charges upheld, the courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Justice had landed, solid and final. I exhaled, long and steady, as though I had been holding my breath since Evelyn died. Outside, the air was cool. Reporters shouted questions, but I kept walking. Tom clapped me on the shoulder. "You're safe now," he said. Safe. That word hadn't meant much in years. But in that moment, under the wide sky, I felt it settle into me. They had tried to steal my life with paper and ink. Instead, they lost theirs to the truth. A week after the verdict, I walked through Evelyn's garden. The roses were late this year, but buds were pushing through, stubborn and alive. She would have smiled at that, at the way beauty insists on returning, even after winter. I pulled a chair to the edge of the garden and sat with a cup of coffee. Tom joined me not long after, carrying 2 pastries from the bakery we used to haunt in our university days. He set one in front of me with a grin. "Not as good as the ones we had back then," he said. "Back then we didn't know better," I replied, chuckling. For a while, we ate in silence, listening to the birds. My mind should have been heavy, my daughter, my grandson, my own blood branded as criminals. But instead, I felt a strange lightness. I realized then that loyalty wasn't written in blood or bound by family trees. It was forged in action, in who stood beside you when the world tried to tear you down. My children had chosen greed. My grandson had chosen betrayal. But an old friend had chosen me. I raised my cup toward Tom. To friends worth more than family. He clinked his cup against mine, and for the first time since Evelyn's passing, I felt at peace. Because I hadn't lost everything. I had only lost the people who deserved nothing.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.